You're out on the road playing for people. How does it feel?
I've been touring my whole life pretty much, but particularly to the extent of 300 days a year, I was out on the road. So I actually, for the first 6 months, was rather enjoying myself, to be honest. I don't live in New York. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I grew up. I moved back to Charlottesville a couple of years after the pandemic. So I was missing the mountains. I was missing my home and my dog, and my mom who lives in Charlottesville. So for the first 6 months, it was actually an incredible opportunity for me to just shut down. I mean, of course, it wasn't all fun and games. It was a global crisis. Everything was going wrong. So it gave me time to reflect and really, when you're on the road, you don't have a chance to really think creatively because of time. Wake up early in the morning, get on the flight, get to the gig, do the gig. There's not a lot of time for creative work. And when you come home from the road, you just want to shut down. So I actually I had this, I'm sure every artist agrees, they had this creative burst, writing music. I'm working on a musical, all these projects that kind of presented themselves to me. And I mean, I'm blessed that I get to now work on these projects that I've been cultivating for some time.
That's fantastic. That actually kind of leads into something I did want to ask you. You are in the position where you've recorded great albums. You've toured so much, like you've said, and I'm sure on the one hand it must be kind of odd to receive these a lot of praise and comparisons to some of these great legacy singers and jazz artists, but on the other hand, trying to find what you do well creatively, but also understanding that jazz is so foundational. So many great players have contributed to the sound of jazz. How do you as an artist balance those things? Because on one night you might leave a gig and someone says you might sound like Ella or something, and then next time it's like a bebop gig, and then the next thing you're writing a musical. How do you balance all that stuff?
Well, I mean, the way I explain it to people, I mean, of course, in the industry likes to put a box around people because it's easy to market. It's easy for people to recognize, which there's value in that. And that's why I chose jazz music as the first genre focus. Because as an artist, if you're expansive and all these, like Linda Ronstadt, who did everything, you have to start with a focus. So I chose jazz music as it's the foundation for everything. It's like ballet for all dance. It has everything: technique and artistry and sophistication, subtlety, elegance, bombastic. There's everything is there, information wise. Also, it's what I grew up with. It's quite my world. So I would take that with me wherever I go, in whatever genre I choose to do. But I try to, when I do concerts, which I will be doing at Rochester, I urge the audience, I connect with the audience and, well, what kinds of music do you guys listen to? I mean, no one has one genre they listen to, or, it's like having a personality, it's sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there. And we've all been through different phases in our life, and we carry those with us with the person we are today. So that's kind of how I put it. These different genres are like different relationships types. So jazz music is a relationship with my parents, literally and figuratively. It's foundational. Rock and roll music and opera, those are relationships with those passionate love affairs that are this way and that and up and down. And that's kind of how I break it down. But the foundation, the thing that connects all these mediums even is storytelling. That's the real genre here. If I'm a jazz singer or if I'm working as a writer for a musical, it's all storytelling.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, take it with me, I think that's a Tom Waits song, isn't it? So yeah. there's some influence there. Love as well. I did want to talk a little bit about Bitter Earth. It's been on the airwaves at Jazz 90.1 for a while now. I know because I also DJ there. And you're going to be playing some selections from that in your upcoming concert in Rochester. So why don't you break down that album a little bit for us? We've touched upon some of these things, drawing from different genre influences, storytelling. What was kind of the aim with this project?
I recorded this Bitter Earth before everything happened, before there was any inkling of a crisis like that, to that scale. 2019. These were all songs that, I always knew that I'm the kind of person that I know exactly what records I want to do down the road. I got the next 10 records I figured out, got it all planned out. But I knew I wanted to do my first record on Mac Avenue as just an introductory. This is hello, nice to meet you all. This is a bit of what I do. This is a bit of my story. I wanted the second album to be something more of a kind of a social commentary without taking a stance on anything opinion wise. I didn't want people to think of me as, this kind of candidate or advocate for this kind of, I didn't want to be connected to a specific issue. I just wanted to present the issues at hand that we're all experiencing together as a planet and society. So that's, we had issues of racism, we had issues of sexual abuse, we had, really intense stuff. And my challenge was, how do I approach these intense topics without, one, pissing anyone off, taking an aside, don't want to alienate my audience, but also two, how do I connect people through these songs and do it in a way that isn't overstepping the comfort zone, but still challenging. I think every artist has this problem with a record like that. So I tried to be as honest as I could, and I chose songs. Everything comes down to the programming, not just the song choices, but the track listing, how the arc plays out. And so I chose songs first that started kind of inward, interpersonal, and then expanded outward in terms of like how our reactions and how our choices and feelings affect the global to a global scale. And that's why start with This Bitter Earth, it has a more minimalist sound, and then the last song, Sing, but Dresden Doll's song is so, epic and big, and that's kind of how I approach that record.
Fantastic. I've been noticing this as a more common theme, probably just coming out of the pandemic. And I think also too, as some kinds of music move to maybe more electronic, you can make them in your basement. It's not as much collaboration. Artists like yourself, John Mathis, who I also have had the privilege to talk to, are kind of moving in the other direction, where it's much more about being live. It's much more about interaction. It's much more about,
yes,
I think the phrase is almost musicking.
Especially now, man.
Yeah. So
yeah.
That, even though you haven't used that phrase yet, that really seems to me like that's something you're thinking a lot about right now as an artist and focusing on, is it's this kind of the back and forth, with the audience. And is that something you're exploring? Yes. And, what do you want to people to take away from any show of yours that they go to with that in mind?
Well, I always say on my shows that there are three elements to making a show happen. There's the physical space. And there are people, the webcasting, the live streaming worked for them, which is brilliant. I personally couldn't handle not having a physical space, that tactile, that we're all in together, that united us. The artists on stage, communicating with the kind of the vessels between music and life, and then it couldn't happen without the audience. You can't do any of this without people there to and share their story too, because sometimes I actually get my audience talking back and forth depending on how big the venue is. I remember we did a New Year's show this year, and it was supposed to be sold out and everything, and it ended up only being 50 people in this giant theater. So I had everybody, I was like, come on, come up to the front center and let's start talking to each other. It felt like a nightclub, so people could feel connected at a time where, the last 2 years we've been so really struggling to feel connected. And that's why I appreciate artists like John and so many of my friends that I make music with. They are advocates for the personal experience.
Fantastic. On the topic of friends and other musicians, you have an absolutely stacked lineup of musicians playing at the show for you. Names like Lauren Sevian, Alexander Claffy, James Sarno. It's a really great band. Talk to me about making music with these cats. You've got piano, keys, full rhythm section, and horns. It's a great band. It's your chance to chat about them a little bit.
Yeah, no one's more proud of the musicians that I play with than me. These are friends of mine, for some of them, for like Julius Rodriguez, who's on piano and keys. I've known him since we were in high school. He must have been middle school. I was 16 or 17 when I met him, so he must have been like 12 or 13. And it's just been, I've been so proud to watch his career unfold, and he's becoming a star in his own right. I always tell people, there's no ego issues. There's no, none of that, because it's all about the music, all about the experience. We just want to tell this story in our, as best we can, our collective story and our personal stories. And I like to give each musician an individual moment, a chance to shine, because they're all stars in their own right. And I think it's hard to find that kind of group, let alone a band of 9 people. Like 4 years ago, I was working with just trio because I didn't ever dream I could have this. I dreamt, of course, but I didn't ever think it was going to be a reality for me because of financial stuff. But I mean, that whole "don't dream it, be it" in Rocky Horror, that's the real thing, man. The music, it's all about that story, and having all those musicians on stage with me, that's essential part of telling that story. So I'm just so proud of them.
Fantastic.
And Brian Viglione of the Dresden Dolls is our drummer now. I mean, I listened to that band since I was 12 years old. Like, it's unreal, you know?
That sounds like a really nice full circle moment. And
yeah, totally.
On that note, you seem to come back to Rochester every couple of years. Jazz festival appearances in 2017, 2019. That was obviously our last one. And this one's ahead of the Jazz Festival, but it's a special May show. So we're kind of on to our sort of the bigger themed questions that I like to ask our artists.
Sure.
And the first is, insofar as you have choice about where you play and where you want to play, you keep finding yourself coming back to Rochester. What makes what about Rochester do you like coming back to? Like playing for a Rochester crowd? What about it makes it special for you?
Every time this is my, I think, 3rd time. But I remember the first time I went, I was on the festival. Like, I was new on the scene, even though I had been touring for whatever 16, 15 years here and there, but I was new on the major scene, right? And I just had enough money to bring a guitar and a bass, you know, and the next time it was like, Confessions had come out, so we had a little more. Each time represented a turning point in my, not career, but my personal life as well. And going back to Rochester, it always feels like I can look back at each gig and look at kind of how I've grown and learn from, certain events that have happened too since then. And where was I then? And am I still acting with integrity to myself? And yeah, man, that last gig, the last time we were there must have been 2019. Yeah. Early in the year. Yeah. Geez, 3 years ago. Yeah. So much has changed.
I was going to say it has gone by very fast. I feel like I blinked in between January and now. It's gone by very quickly.
And when like at this point in one's life, the mid to late, early, all the 20s, it's just exponential, growth in the learning experience. So it's amazing to share that with the audience. And actually, I'm excited to even get to meet like Mark Iacona and all the people that kind of make everything happen there, and properly thank them for all they do for this music.
I love it.
Community.
Next question on the list. We more or less started the interview with your next projects. You said that you've got the next 10 years of stuff planned. What's like the next big thing you want to accomplish? What's the next thing on the horizon for you?
Well, I have been writing. I'm not going to go too much into it, but eventually I would really love to get this musical that I've been writing, would love to get it made into a movie maybe someday, or a stage production off Broadway. Who knows, man? But that's kind of in the next 10 years, something I would like to do, as well as really explore this transgenre musical concept that has been going over pretty well so far, as in terms of connecting all different kinds of audiences, jazz audiences, rock and roll audiences, and introduce myself to new audiences, and kind of start a little, not movement, that's a little too pretentious, but you know what I mean, right? Like that, kind of explore this transgenre concept a little bit with my musician and see what the people dig about it. So it's kind of on the horizon for me.
Sweet. And our last one, do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Invest. No.
Exactly.
I mean, that is no joke. I went to did a master class, and I remember Emmett, we were at this teaching this master class, and I remember he had mentioned that investing is like pretty, people don't think about nowadays with crypto being so in the mainstream, I guess. Anyway, the advice I would give that has served me well my entire life is tracing everything back to the source. If there are artists, a lot of young musicians don't know, I guess, how to listen or what to listen for, where to find music, which ironic, right? Because in this world of Spotify and all the streaming platforms that we have endless plethora of knowledge, musical knowledge at our disposal here. And it can be, intimidating how to go about finding records, especially because not a lot of people listen with other friends, musicians, which they need to be doing, especially if they're in a band together, listening together. But I always ask, who's your favorite, who's your favorite singer? And a kid might say Ella Fitzgerald, right? It's like, oh, great. So what about Ella? Do you like this and that? Who is Ella listening to? And that's where everybody doesn't know what they would say, like, well, Louis Armstrong, this and that. Yes, but other singers, like, who's another? And the answer would be Connie. One of her biggest influences was Connie Boswell of the Boswell sisters. And then who are the Boswell sisters listening to? So keep tracing back the source of, it's endless, like a tree with roots, just keep growing and growing all different directions. But finding your favorite artists and what influenced them can help inform your sound and even give you insight into your favorite artist and yourself. And that's a key thing in finding one's own sound that helped me. So I guess that's something I would say to young artists.